Welcome to WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast from Pharma Voice. This episode is made possible by a generous sponsorship from Score Marketing. For more information, visit scorrmarketing.com. In this episode, Taryn Grome, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Pharma Voice, meets with Lisa Rose, Senior VP and Chief Marketing Officer, LifeScan.
Lisa, welcome to the WOW podcast program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Lisa, your career journey has been expansive and diverse. Can you lead us through some of the highlights from consumer P&G to your current role as CMO at LifeScan?
Sure. Yeah. So actually, I started my career in sales, and I carried a bag actually in the Chicago area, and then got my MBA and joined P&G after that. When I joined P&G, I was expecting to get the traditional brand management marketing degree that everybody used to go to P&G for. And instead, I started with the company in an upstream innovation think tank called Corporate New Ventures. And, that role actually exposed me to corporate entrepreneurship, kind of a innovation hotbed focus. And it was super exciting. And frankly, I've had innovation as part of my whole career as a result. And I love that space.
Innovation is a fascinating space, right? It allows you to spread your wings in so many different areas and really to think expansively. And I'm always intrigued by innovators. And obviously you are an innovator since you've worked in that space for so long. Do you think innovation can be taught, or is it really part of somebody's DNA?
I think you do learn. Innovation is a discipline, right? You do learn different frameworks and techniques and how to think innovatively, how to approach problems in a very creative way. So yeah, I do think it can be taught. I mean, I think there's an innate piece that's probably a little more about risk tolerance. Are you willing to push boundaries, challenge the status quo? Are you comfortable with ambiguity? Right? Those are probably the sort of more innate characteristics that go alongside of being successful in innovation. But in general, innovation is a discipline. And so that is something that you can learn and should actually study and learn from history and case examples and, push yourself to learn more through experimentation and piloting, for sure.
Fantastic. I love to hear that we can potentially teach somebody to be innovative. As Chief Marketing Officer, you are responsible for leading the global marketing organization, obviously, for LifeScan. Tell me about the scope of this role.
Yeah, so I lead the marketing organization, country level, area, region, global. And my role is really to help shape the strategy for LifeScan with the executive leadership team to help support and drive innovation, new programs, new projects around the globe, and then support talent development of the marketing organization, build the leaders of tomorrow, right, today.
That's amazing. And how many people report into you, or how many people are you responsible for?
The organization's about 120 large, which is a decent size. I've actually had larger organizations when I was with Abbott. So in some ways, I'm enjoying having an organization where I can get to know people at all levels across the globe more intimately.
Oh, what a nice, yes. What a nice luxury to have, I guess, if you can
It
call it a
is,
luxury.
actually. It's kind of nice.
In shaping the brand strategy and changing the way people talk about managing their conditions, moving from a focus on blood glucose to one of a more personalized or holistic wellness perspective, how does the recent collaboration with Fitbit fit into the company's overall strategy? That's fascinating.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm super excited about our partnership with Fitbit, and actually we just signed on a partnership with Noom and Cecilia Health and a smaller company called WellDoc, and it's all part of our bigger strategy to be more meaningful and relevant and supportive of our consumers, people with diabetes. One of the things that I've come to learn in this space is that diabetes is really a multifactorial condition. It's influenced by your sleep, your activity, what you eat, what you drink. All these different elements really go into understanding how well you are managing your glucose levels. And yet, historically, our organization, and I think most of the companies in this space, have been really just focused on, well, let's monitor and measure the glucose level, but not all the other things that actually impact the glucose levels. And so what we're trying to do with Fitbit and these other partnerships is really build an integrated ecosystem of data and insight that we can bring back to our consumers to share with them how they're doing, in not just, what is the number, but what does the number mean, and how are they doing in managing their numbers. And it's one of the things that consumers have told us repeatedly, that it's just very frustrating, right? Diabetes is a tough condition. You live with it for a very long time. And it's tough to manage because it's unpredictable. What happens with your insulin levels is just very unpredictable. And yet, if they understood how they personally, right, are reacting to, let's say, a banana, right, or running up and down stairs, or, getting 8 hours of sleep, if they understood that for themselves, help them get to know themselves better. That's our mission, being a positive partner in change. They could actually do a better job day to day and feel more confident in their daily activities. So we're putting a lot of different partners together. We're creating an integrated ecosystem. Our ambition is to really bring back these insights on a very personal level to patients, to help them with their positive changes and how they enhance their lifestyle. So it's exciting. It's very exciting. This is the beginning of a master plan, but we're committed to it, and it's great to see, companies like Fitbit as excited as we are, right, about the potential opportunity here to help patients in new ways.
That's awesome. And I love that loop that you're creating, right? And that's what's been missing in the past. So it was just a readout.
That's right.
Patients had no idea what that meant or how it impacted them or what they could do differently in their own lifestyles. So that's fantastic. And, and as you continue to build out this master plan, which I love that term too, it makes you feel like, we've got all this stuff in the works. How does it fit into you in terms of the DTC component of it? As we can, is that even a term anymore, direct to consumer? It feels
absolutely
now consumer oriented.
Yeah, it is very consumer oriented. It's something that's, it's been interesting. I started my career, as I mentioned, in P&G. I started in sales and then innovation, and I actually spent 13 years with Procter, really honing my consumer skill sets and bringing new products to consumers across a variety of categories, like, coffee and cosmetics and laundry. I mean, you can ask me anything you want about stain removal, and I think I've probably got something under in the bag for you. But it was when I got into the medical field, right, into healthcare, that I started to realize all of the sort of more clinical approaches, right, to healthcare. And it's fascinating because, we think about health as a consumer, you think about it as, oh, how do I feel, right? And a doctor says, I don't really care how you feel. What I care about is, your stats, what your body's saying, right? And what's your condition, and what's your current numbers and all that good stuff, right? Blood pressure and hemoglobin and whatever, right? And so it's very clinical. And so consumers, live a different way of thinking about health than the clinical world. And it a lot of times it's held very separate, right? And as consumers become much more focused on wanting to understand themselves, right? I mean, the whole internet boom and WebMD and, right, really unlocked opportunities for consumers to spend more time really knowing themselves in a deeper way. But yet so much of healthcare hasn't really embraced, right, that sort of consumer evolution, even though we do hear a lot of physicians talking about how, yeah, it used to be the doc had to know everything, but now, right, consumers come in and they ask questions, and at first maybe they were a bit resistant about it, but now they're quite open to it, and they will say things like, I'm actually glad when my consumer comes in and is more informed and is spending time learning about their own body and what's happening, and they can ask more educated questions. It makes for a richer dialogue and relationship with my patient. So one of the things that we're kind of focused on is in diabetes. You know, you see a lot of these apps, these digital apps, right? And they'll say things like, you know, here's your number, have some juice. Or they'll say things like, here, you know, I noticed you didn't log your lunch. You know, you should log your lunch now, right? And these are all algorithms, and they're built into the app, and they're very generic, right? They're helpful, right? Nothing wrong with it, and actually they serve a really good purpose, but they're fairly generic. They're not personalized, and that's, I think, the new frontier for a lot of us in healthcare, and it's our mission and our goal to push the boundaries now, is how do we help our consumers have a more personalized understanding of the underlying factors for their condition and help them with actionable insights that are specific to them. You know, I didn't realize this. I don't have a personal connection to diabetes, but, you know, some of the folks on my team do, and they've been, you know, sharing with me things like, hey, you know, one day I can eat a banana and be totally fine. The next day I eat a banana and my insulin spikes. Why? What happened? How do I know what, you know, from one day to the next, what's going to happen? Or, you know, my friend can eat a whole bag of M&Ms and have no issue at all, right? But if they eat a marshmallow, it's a big problem. You know, it's just things like that. And a lot of it has to do with all the other stuff that's going on in their life. Did they get 8 hours of sleep? Did they drink 8 glasses of water? What else did they eat with it? You know, there's so many factors. And so these generic statements, while helpful, they really don't go the full mile, right? They don't really go to the patient to help them understand themselves. So we'd like to get to that more personalized view and really make a deeper connection with each one of our patients and our consumers.
That's fantastic. And yes, and making that personalized connection, because patients are becoming their own physicians in some ways. And so they know their bodies better than anybody. So that's
exactly
really light years ahead of where we were even having conversations 5 years ago. So look at how.
Right. And that's the D2C piece, right? I mean, that's why you need to take a more, you know, consumer-centered view, because if you take it from a clinical view only, and I'm not saying clinical is bad, right? By no means. We need to make sure we're clinically relevant and we're doing the right things medically, which is why we have, you know, Dr. Elizabeth Hold on our team. We have quite a few folks that are medical professionals that we consult with, right, to make sure we're being very thoughtful on the medical side. But you need to take a different approach with consumers, right? That's centered on insights for them in their lives and speaking to them even in a voice and using language, right, that's resonant with them. If I may, I'll digress for just a nanosecond if you allow. But we did some research recently where we heard, we have a coaching subscription program in one of our products, and we were doing some research on it, and we found that actually consumers really did not like that word coach. And yet, I tell you, you Google diabetes apps and you'll see that word coach all over the place. And it was fascinating. I was like, well, why don't they like the word coach? What's wrong with that? And of course, a lot of them went to, well, coaches are like for soccer and sports, and they reminded them of people yelling at you and telling you what you're doing wrong. It had very negative connotations, right? So voice and tone and language matters significantly, right, in some of these products and how we approach our consumers. So we're going really deep, trying to make sure we're super consistent with how our consumers want to be talked to and what's going to resonate with them.
That's so interesting. I would never have thought coach in that kind of way, because I think of coach as being a supporter, somebody who's encouraging and somebody who is willing to, guide you along the way. So interesting feedback.
It's fascinating.
Absolutely. What should we be watching for the next 18 months in terms of some trends that are going to impact the diabetes and what you all are doing?
Sure. Yeah. So look, I, in its broadest terms, right, to answer the question is, you'll continue to see growth and innovation in glucose monitoring. We're obviously looking at, a lot of different technologies and opportunities to bring new products, new technologies in the glucose monitoring space specifically. But also we're looking at how to drive, I mean, COVID, right, opened our eyes to telehealth. Of course, it was always present, but it really became significant. So telehealth becomes, and connectivity broadly throughout the ecosystem becomes is a key focus and strategy and continues to be how we support our physicians and support them with their patients. And then, of course, digital health, right, continuing to support consumers directly through reimbursement schemes, through physicians, but bringing them new tools, new support approaches, and obviously with all of that comes more partners and a broader ecosystem to boot, right? So,
Excellent.
A lot of exciting stuff in the horizon.
A lot of exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to how this all unfolds. Obviously, diabetes is such a hot market right now. We're seeing all kinds of commercials on television, and does that general awareness, it must lift the boats for the market, right? For consumers and education around all of that. So all of this is very positive, I would think.
Absolutely.
Whether they're a competitor to you or your company or whatever, just that overall general education around diabetes has got to be just a game changer.
It is. I think it really is. I think it's a good thing. It helps. I think for a while there might, people feel like there's a bit of a stigma approach with it, right? I was in a consumer group actually just this week, and this one lady was talking about how she feels the world is just not built for people like her. And it was just heartbreaking, and it's because she was talking about how at work, if she has to go and dose insulin or check her glucose levels, right, she just didn't feel it was much compassion. She was working in a retail environment, and it's very challenging for her to say to her boss, hey, I have to take a break. I have to go check my glucose. I have to go eat something or whatever, right? And it was just, she just feels the world is not compassionate, right, to people like her. And so I think awareness and opening people's eyes to what people with diabetes have to deal with is super important. And we should do more of that as much as we can, really.
Fantastic. Let's go to some of your key leadership skills. You obviously have had one of the greatest proving grounds in consumer working at P&G. What a playground to, getting into the consumer mindset. And you have significant experience in building high-performing, customer-focused delivery teams. So what are some of your keys to success?
Look, I think that the first key is really having great talent, right? And building strong teams below you, with you, and across, right? I think it's, at the end of the day, it's recognizing that, we're all here to deliver against a purpose, right? And that purpose can be a lot of different things. But we all come to work wanting to do the right thing, do good things, and make good things happen. And so, being able to work with great talent and build talent and help people grow, I think is super important to having, a high-performing team. I think everybody knowing what the goal is, right? What's the hill we're going to take? Being able to envision the potential and the possibilities for folks so folks can see it and go, wow, yeah, I see that hill and I want to be part of it. And so everybody's joined at the hip, right? In seeing that goal and being energized to go grab it. I think diversity is a super important component here because, so many times teams can have group think or be myopic or, if everybody comes from the same background or same walk of life, they may really miss important connectors, for how you might do something differently or problem solve an issue in a different way. And so leveraging diverse thinking and having the team feel open and comfortable to debate and then have a desire to build on each other makes for a strong team. And then last but not least, I think it's, incumbent on us as leaders, right, to make sure folks feel accountable, feel empowered to deliver, and there's a sense of urgency, right, to get things done in a dependable, kind of confident way. So, and so when you're on a good team, right, it's fun, and everybody's rowing in the same direction, and you as a team believe in what you're doing, right, that it has purpose. So
Absolutely. It's all about the mission based and having that common vision
hmm
and being
yep,
collaborative. I love the piece about diversity because I think that is super important today, especially as we're looking at diverse patient populations and how diseases affect these different patient populations. So you have
yep,
to have people on
absolutely.
the team who represent the people you're serving.
Yep,
So
absolutely, exactly. I mean, it's like what I was mentioning earlier, this example of coaching, right? We all come from it differently, and what coach means and to one person may mean something different to another, and being able to recognize that there's going to be that kind of a different reaction, and it's important to understand, right, what the meaning really is to the majority of folks. I mean, that right there is a great example, right? You could easily not see that, but having diverse folks on the team sort of recognize, hey, that's, we should rethink that or look at this differently. Yeah.
fantastic. You obviously have reached a significant level in your career. What advice can you share with other women who may want to reach that C-suite or executive level? What steps should they take to give them the best advantage of doing so? We're still working in a very male-dominated industry, and sometimes it's a little bit harder for women to, get that up that next rung.
Yeah. I read a long time ago a book, and I'm trying to remember the author's name, but it was called Hardball for Women,
Oh,
and it was a great book because it actually talked about a lot of things that I didn't understand about, I hate to say it, male culture, because that I don't mean to be off-puttish, but about male culture, and one of the things that comes with it, and how to think about team, and is it Linda Sanborn from she wrote the book Lean In.
Cheryl. Yep.
That don't if the conference table's full and there's a chair in the back, don't go sit down in the back. Pull the chair up to the table, right? You belong there, and that confidence is important. I mean, on Hardball, one of the things I never realized, the whole handshake, and when guys come into a room and there's that sort of camaraderie, kind of aspect, even though it's just a business meeting. It is all part of how women need to lean in and engage, maybe in a way that isn't comfortable right out of the gate, but take some risk, push yourself, right? You belong there and know that, right? I think the other thing is, grow your skills. Don't stand still. Don't be complacent. Push yourself to learn new things, to get into uncomfortable environments, so that you grow, take on new challenges. I remember a long time ago, mentioned to me once about how women don't want to take a role unless they're certain they're going to do a good job. Whereas oftentimes guys will lean in and just say, sure, I'll do it, even though they have no idea whether they can do the job or not. Women need to do more of that, right? They need to take some risk and recognize you belong there. You're going to do a great job, and push yourself, I think that makes a big difference. And then last but not least, I would say, find mentors. It's a common refrain. We hear it often. I know it's nothing new, but if you can find mentors and people you can communicate and talk to about, hey, I observed this kind of behavior or this approach, or, people tackling something X, Y, Z. Can you help me, read the tea leaves, what's happening here, and getting some advice that way from someone who's not in your direct chain of command is a good thing. And then last but not least, I think this is something I've always, focused on is just know what the big stuff is that matters. And then work on those, right? And help your team make an impact. And you do that and good things happen.
I think those are 4 excellent points. Yeah, absolutely. Be willing to take those risks. Take the job even if you haven't checked all the boxes.
Yep.
Understand that, what, you may not be perfect for it, but it's okay. And get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
mentoring, we say it's a common refrain, but it's a common refrain because it's not happening often enough.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to keep reminding them, find those mentors, and maybe they're not in your organization, maybe they're outside of your organization, and no matter where you are in your career journey, you can always use a mentor, right? Because you need mentoring along different points of your career path. So,
right. And it's not a sign of weakness, right? To say, hey, I'm not following why this happened? Or can you help me think about how I might have handled this situation differently? I realized after the fact it didn't go the way I thought it would go, or whatever, right? It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of growth and having a growth mindset, because you're basically saying, hey, I have things I want to work on, and I want to improve, and I want to get better. And we should be doing that all the time. It doesn't matter what level you're at or where you're at. There's always something more that you can improve upon or do better at and get better at. And if you have that as a growth focus, again, I think good things will happen.
I think that you're right. You hit it on the growth mindset and curiosity. Being always curious is one of those signs of a good leader, because nobody knows everything, and that's part of the learning process, is to continually be curious. Awesome.
Absolutely.
So I have to ask you this question: is there anything you know now that you wish you knew 10 years ago as you were making your moves?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess I think it's actually what you just said. I'll echo it, which is it's okay to not know everything. In fact, it's oftentimes better to jump in and just say, hey, be vulnerable. I don't know X, Y, Z, and have your people lead your thinking. Have them be the ones that are driving to solution, and you can sit back. It's okay. You don't have to always be in front. It's actually okay as a leader to be really just supporting your people, right? And the concepts a long time ago, right? There are lots of books written on servant leadership, and I have to admit, back then I wasn't really clear on what that meant. It's like, what does that mean? As a leader, you're supposed to be out front, right? You're supposed to be driving the agenda. You have all the answers. Well, no, absolutely not. Right? It's everybody around you. It's supporting them and making them successful, and leveraging, right, their great ideas, and helping them make it happen, right? That makes a big difference.
That's awesome. Exactly. That servant leadership. And I think, that means having to be vulnerable too. And that's not comfortable, right? It's just a state of
it's not
comfort.
Easy. Yeah.
It's not easy. And that's where it goes back. You have to learn to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that's okay. And I think that's a hard lesson, for men and women to learn. And I think if more men were more vulnerable, we'd probably be in a better place, but I digress.
Yeah, that's another whole topic, isn't it?
Exactly. So, Lisa, tell me about an accomplishment or a wow moment that either shaped your career or changed the trajectory of your career.
Okay, so this is a long, long time ago, but I was working on a brand at P&G, and it's a shaped my career and my thinking as a leader kind of moment, because at that time I was leading a team to bring a new product to market in record time. The team had worked super hard, and we were super excited to get our product into a test market. We had like one of those ridiculous, like, get it done in 6 months kind of challenges, right? And it was a cross-functional team: product development, marketing, sales, etc. We got it done, and we were super excited. We're high-fiving, and not only did we get it done, but actually the test results were phenomenal, right? About a year, it took a year, but about a year in, the product proved itself. It was going to be a great idea, etc. At that time, I thought, well, okay, it's a given, right? That the company's going to invest, and we're going to expand, and the purpose, right? We really made a difference. And at that time, P&G had already decided, I didn't know this, right? But it had already decided that they were going to divest their focus in the food business. So even though we had these stellar results, even though we killed ourselves to get it done, the management at that time said, no, we're not going to expand. Thank you very much. Appreciate your effort, but we're done. And that wasn't the defining moment. It was actually, I reacted to that super negatively, right? And I have to say, from a business maturity standpoint, I'm not proud. Right? I was emotionally very reactive. Okay, let's just put it that way. And I thought that was the biggest injustice, right, ever. And I felt like the team had been completely misserved, and I was just super unhappy, like I failed, right? And I failed the team. Not a great place to be. And I remember at that time, my boss took me aside after a couple of weeks of my brewing and being a bit immature about the whole thing, and said, hey, you need to recognize you're having an impact on the entire organization. And as a leader, I need you to really understand how you're not serving the team acting this way. In fact, you need to serve the team by picking them back up and getting them refocused on what matters. Focus on the big stuff, right? I was not focused on the big stuff. I was focused on me, right? And how I was feeling. And so I was like, wait, what do you mean? What do I have to, And she's like, yeah, listen, Lisa, the plant even knows how mad you are about this. They were like 20 miles away, right? And I was like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, I guess I better, reassess here my behavior. And it really, what it taught me though was really this sort of sense of like, hey, yeah, focus on the big stuff and focus on how you help the people around you, right, and the people below you and across from you and above you, as I mentioned earlier, that it's not about winning or failing or whatever, right? It's about doing the right thing at the right moment with the information you have. And you don't always have all the information, right? You don't always know what's happening at a corporate level and in higher levels of strategy and what people are talking about. And that's okay, right? But once you get that kind of information and receive it, your first default should be on, okay, what does this mean to the team? What do I need to do now? How do I lean in, right, and help the team move forward, irrespective of success or failure or whatever? How do we learn from it? And, I mentioned growth mindset earlier, but I think for me, that was a defining moment to say, what is a growth mindset in this situation, right? And how do I embrace that and look at things differently? And so throughout my career, you always have setbacks and things happen and things don't go according to plan, but rather than reacting to it, it's embrace it, absorb it, and now what? And so what, right? For the organization. How do we advance and move forward from this? How do we grow? How do we learn from it, right? Take it in and do something more or better or different.
Well, I want to thank you for being vulnerable and answering that question. That was really showing a tremendous amount of authenticity. And I'm not sure that most people wouldn't have reacted the same way. You had tremendous loyalty to your team and you saw how hard they were working. And so you were probably more mad for them than you were actually for yourself. So while I can see where, your boss might have said you need to chill out a little bit, but I bet he probably had some admiration too, that you had your people's backs. So it
was, and everybody has them, right? And it's what you do with that learning in that moment that matters, and how do you carry that forward? And it stayed, it was a long time ago in my career, but it stayed with me.
That's a great lesson. And it's something that I will take forward as well, because you do have oftentimes those emotional reactions. And I think that's okay too, because otherwise we're just kind of robots, right? Going through the day.
That's right. We all bleed red, right?
Exactly. If there's no emotion in it, then why are we doing it? Because we feel passionately about what we're doing. We're committed to the mission. We're committed to the purpose. So of course that's going to, have some elevated emotion around it. But what you do with that emotion and how you direct it, that's the lesson. So thank you for that. Lisa, it was a pleasure to speak with you, and I look forward to the master plan and seeing what happens in the near and shorter term and longer term. And thank you for all you're doing to make a difference for those who are living with diabetes. As you said, this is a disease that is chronic, that hundreds of millions of people are living with. And if we could just make it easier for them in some small ways, what a difference you're making in the world. So thank you so much.
That's right. Well, thank you. And thank you for the time this morning. I appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast. And thanks again to Score Marketing for sponsoring this episode. For more information, visit scorrmarketing.com. And don't forget to check out our other WOW podcast episodes at pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2021 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks, LLC.